Tonight, picture a fire guttering low at the edge of a clearing, sparks lifting into a sky heavy with stars. The air smells of smoke and damp earth. Around you, a circle of faces is drawn close, eyes wet, shoulders hunched. There is no sound except the crackle of wood and the muffled sob of someone too young to understand. At the center lies stillness, a body that will never rise again. The first silence has fallen, and though you'd probably never make it through a single prehistoric night, don't worry, I'll guide you safely through. So, before we go further, if this gentle company soothes you, you can tap like and subscribe, but only if it feels right to your heart. And if you're listening alone in London, or lying awake in New York, or anywhere the night feels too long, leave a note in the comments. Share where you are, so none of us drift through the dark alone. Now dim the lights, loosen your breath, let your shoulders drop, and step with me into the first silence of humankind. Together, here on timeless sleep, the body lies motionless, yet the air is thick with presence. You sense something has changed, something that will not be undone. Hunger and cold you know how to fight, but this is different. This is final. The hands you once touched no longer grip. The voice you knew no longer answers, and yet you cannot simply walk away. The others will not leave the body for scavengers. They gather instead, crouching low, heads bowed. Something inside you insists that the one who fed the fire, who carried water, who laughed at night, must not be abandoned to animals and weather. So you linger torn between fear and reverence. The smell of decay threatens, yet still you hesitate. You cover the face with your hands, then pull them back unsettled. You look around, wondering, what now? This is the first question, the oldest riddle. What do we do with our dead? At first the answers are small gestures, a body covered in leaves tucked into a hollow, hidden from predators, a simple act of protection, but also of care. Later, soil is pulled over the body, stones placed on top, marking both concealment and memory. The act does not feed the living, does not bring back the dead, and yet it matters. In that covering lies recognition that the one who lived is not simply meat, but something more. Archaeologists trace some of the earliest burials back at least 100,000 years. In caves of the Middle East and Africa, skeletons lie curled, knees drawn, arms tucked. They were not dragged there by accident, not scattered by chance. They were placed. Someone knelt, adjusted limbs, arranged body. This deliberate care is the seed of burial. It is not yet ceremony as we know it, but it is more than disposal. It is respect, acknowledgement, maybe even hope. Imagine being the one to dig. Your hands claw through soil, fingernails clogged with mud. Each scoop is weighty, more than dirt, more than stone. Others bring branches, stones, shells. Together, you form a hollow, a cradle of earth. You lift the body gently, yes, gently, though strength alone would suffice, and lower it in. A shiver runs through the group. You know, though none of you can say, that you have done something different, something that will echo far beyond this night. There is silence, heavy and unbroken. Then slowly, someone hums. Another rocks forward, keening softly, a sound between cry and chant. Grief demands sound, demands shape. These first laments are not words, but they are music, raw and trembling. Others join, voices weaving sorrow into rhythm. Even as your chest aches, you feel the sound bind you together, softening loneliness, sharing loss. Music is born here too, born of mourning, but not all is solemn. Children, confused, may tug at bodies, laugh nervously, ask questions. An elder may whisper something wry, trying to ease fear. He is only sleeping longer this time. A ripple of chuckles may follow. Even as tears fall, humor edges grief, reminding all that even in loss, Life insists on laughter. Humanity has never grieved without joking, never mourned without easing pain with smiles. The burial deepens into ritual. Someone lays a hand on the chest, another places a broken tool beside the body. These gestures mean little in survival, but much in heart. They whisper, "You mattered, you will be remembered." In these offerings lie the first grave goods, the first acknowledgement that the dead travel somewhere, that they might need companions beyond breath. When the soil finally covers the body, you press it down with palms, smoothing, shaping. Stones are stacked, not only to protect, but to mark. A cairn rises, small but visible. When you pass by in days to come, you will see it, and remember, you will point to it. Tell the children, "Here lies the one who once walked with us." The grave is more than whole. It is memory planted in earth. Archaeologists at Kofse Cave in Israel found such graves, humans carefully buried with deer antlers placed on chests, pigments scattered nearby. At Shanidar in Iraq, Neanderthals seem to have tucked flowers beside their dead, pollen lingering even after tens of thousands of years. These gestures are fragile, lissig, yet they endure, frozen in soil. They speak across ages. We grieved, we remembered, we honored, and in honoring, belief awakens. But to treat the body as special is to wonder where the person went. If they are not here, then where are they? The first burials are also the first prayers whispered without words, trembling with hope that death is not end but passage. In the act of burial lies the birth of afterlife, of spirit of eternity. So tonight, as you lie back, imagine yourself at that first grave, soil dark beneath your nails, chest aching with grief, voice trembling in chant. You press the final stone, smooth the mound, step back. The fire crackles, the stars burn, the air is heavy. You feel absence, but also presence, as though the one below still lingers, watching, listening. You do not know where they have gone, but you know they are not gone entirely. The first silence is not emptiness, it is doorway, and in burying, you have opened it. The mound of soil rests quietly, its shape just slightly raised above the surrounding ground. You linger, watching the way moonlight smooths its edges, how dew begins to gather across the stones pressed on top. The air feels different now. Before, the body had been an unsettling presence, a question without an answer. Now it lies beneath, hidden yet remembered. You sense something has changed forever. The earth itself has become keeper of memory. You are witnessing the first shallow graves where survival gives way to reverence, where the living bend earth not for food or fire but for the dead. Imagine the work of these first graves. The soil is hard, clawed at with sticks, dug with flat stones, scraped with bare hands. There are no shovels, no spades, only muscle and patience. It is not easy. Each handful of earth is stubborn, heavy, resisting, yet the group persists, sweating, grunting, sometimes sighing. What drives them? Not utility. The body could simply be left for scavengers. No, this is different. It is devotion, protection, recognition that the one who walked, who spoke, who gave, deserves more than abandonment. The graves are shallow, only a little deeper than the body itself. The soil is not rich or easy to move, and predators still prowl nearby. So the living place stones above, branches woven, logs dragged, to shield the body from teeth and claws. It is not perfect. Some graves will be disturbed, some bones carried away, but the effort itself marks a boundary between wildness and humanity. The dead are claimed, defended, honored. Archaeological sites confirm these beginnings. At Skul and Kofse in the Levant, bodies have been found deliberately laid in shallow pits, limbs arranged, skulls tilted carefully to one side. Some were sprinkled with ochre, others accompanied by deer antlers or stone tools. The shallowness of these graves shows both limitation and intention. They could not dig deep, but they dug anyway. They chose earth over abandonment, memory over forgetting. Picture the act of laying down the body. A hollow is scooped in the sand, shallow and crude. The body is lowered, knees bent, arms tucked, as though curled in sleep. Soil is pushed back, patting it down. Stones are placed carefully, pressing the mound flat. The group stands around, breathing hard. There are no words for ceremony, but gestures say enough. This life was more than flesh. The earth will cradle it now. Sometimes the shallow grave is inside the shelter within the cave where the group sleeps. Imagine lying by fire, knowing your kin lies just beneath the floor. The presence is eerie yet comforting. They are gone, yet still near, part of the hearth, part of the night. To step on that soil is to step on memory, to live daily with ancestors literally beneath your feet. The cave becomes home not only for living, but for dead. Other times, graves are outside, marked by cairns. A pile of stones rises against the plain, visible from distance. Each passerby remembers, points, tells story. Here lies the one who fed us in famine. Here lies the child who made us laugh. The grave becomes landmark, a fixed point in the shifting wilderness. Memory anchors itself in earth, and with anchoring comes ritual repetition. When another dies, the group digs near the first, shallow but deliberate. Soon a cluster forms, a place of rest. A proto-cemetery is born, not by plan but by instinct. The dead draw each other, their graves joining into silent community. The living visit, linger, leave offerings, a bead, a shell, a tool broken and placed. Each gift says, "You still matter, we still remember." Even humor finds its way here. Imagine someone placing an absurd offering, a broken stick, a pebble shaped like animal droppings. The group chuckles, knowing the dead would have laughed too. The gift is half joke, half love, proof that even in grief, joy survives. The shallow grave is not only site of sorrow but also of continuity, where laughter mingles with tears. Over time, shallow graves change how the living see death. To place body in earth is to imagine earth as cradle, womb, passage. Death is no longer erasure but journey, no longer end but transition. The grave itself whispers, "Here they sleep, here they travel, here they wait." Belief in afterlife, in spirit, in return, stirs within soil. Archaeologists sometimes find bodies laid with heads facing east, as if waiting for sunrise. Was this accident or symbol? Perhaps the dead were placed to meet dawn, to rise again with sun. Others lie curled like fetuses, as though returning to womb of earth, ready for rebirth. These choices, subtle but deliberate, tell us that shallow graves were not neutral. They were statements, early theology in earth. Children too were given graves, tiny bodies tucked with beads, shells, flowers. Such tenderness tells us grief was not only for elders, but for the smallest lives. The shallow grave became cradle of mourning, teaching group to face loss with love, not indifference. Through these burials, humans declared, even the briefest life deserves memory. And with memory came belonging. To share a grave site was to share identity, and ancestors lay beneath, kinship pressing into soil. Children grew up visiting these mounds, touching stones, hearing stories. Burial ground became heritage, claiming land, rooting tribe. The first shallow graves were also the first claims to territory. Here we live, here we die, here we remain. Even today, shallow graves echo in rural cemeteries, mounds beneath grass, stones rising in fields. We still press bodies into earth, cover them with soil, mark them with rock. Modern graves may be deeper, but the gesture is same, to return flesh to ground, to anchor memory in place. We carry the instinct unchanged across millennia. So tonight, as your breath slows, imagine kneeling by one of those first shallow graves, your hands raw soil clinging to nails, chest aching with grief. You press last stone, step back, and stand in silence with others. The night is cool, stars burn, fire flickers. Beneath the mound lies not only body, but meaning, the first sign that humanity will never let its dead vanish into wilderness. You feel sorrow, yes, but also connection, comfort, hope. The earth has become cradle, the grave has become story, and through it, you feel less alone. The shallow grave rests quietly, but when you look closer at other burials across time, you notice something new. The earth is no longer the only covering. Bodies are dusted with a strange powder, red as fire, clinging to bones like dried blood. This is ochre, the iron-rich pigment dug from earth, ground fine, sprinkled thick across the dead. It stains hands, tools, soil, skin. To scatter it is no accident. To coat the body in red is symbol, a gesture older than memory. Ochre becomes the color of death and of life beyond it. Picture the act itself. Someone kneels by the grave, a stone in hand, grinding ochre against rock until it powders into fine dust. The smell is sharp, earthy, metallic. The dust clings to fingers, stains nails. The mourner sprinkles it slowly, covering face, chest, hands of the departed. A red cloud rises, settles, marking body with hue of blood, hue of sunrise. To do this is not practical. It feeds no one, shelters no one. Yet the gesture is powerful, unmistakably intentional. Why red? Perhaps because it mirrors blood, the fluid of life spilled in birth and death alike. To coat a corpse in red is to restore life symbolically, to suggest vitality persists even as breath stops. Perhaps it recalls fire, the warmth that protects through night. To give red to the dead is to keep them warm, alive in symbol. Or perhaps it marks spirit itself, painting soul for journey ahead. Whatever the reason, red ochre transforms death into ritual, body into canvas, grave into theatre of meaning. Archaeologists have found ochre burials across continents, in Africa, the Middle East, Europe, even Australia. At J Cave, skeletons lie dusted red, some with deer antlers placed on top, as though crowned. In Russia, a child's bones were covered with ochre, tiny beads strung beside. In South Africa, sites more than 70,000 years old reveal ochre ground in workshops, its use not random but systematic. The practice is nearly universal, suggesting deep symbolic pull shared across humanity. And ochre is not confined to burials. It stains tools, ornaments, cave walls. It paints skin in life as well as death. It is cosmetic, ritual, magical. To grind ochre is to summon color from stone, to make earth itself bleed red. In this sense, to bury with ochre is to merge life and earth, to promise continuity through color. The same pigment that marked dancers and hunters in life marked them again in death. Humor slips in here too. Imagine a child helping sprinkle ochre, sneezing as dust fills the air, covering their own face red. The group chuckles through tears. Now you look like ancestor yourself. Laughter breaks solemnity. Even as the ritual continues, ochre binds sorrow and joy, play and prayer, in one powder. Sometimes ochre burials are elaborate, bodies entirely coated, soil thick with pigment. Other times, it is only a handful sprinkled, a gesture quick but significant. Both reveal intent. Both show recognition that body is more than flesh. The pigment is offering, symbol, perhaps even passport into other world. To cover in red is to say you will rise again, marked with life's hue. The grinding of ochre, also became ritual act. Groups gathered to scrape and pound stone, mixing powder with fat, water, or spit. The sound of grinding, the dust rising, the smell of iron, all became part of ceremony. Children learned to help. Elders guided. Everyone stained red. By time pigment reached grave, it carried not only colour but collective effort, communal devotion. In some burials, bones themselves are painted after flesh has gone. This suggests return to grave, opening it, tending remains with pigment. Death was not single event but ongoing relationship, renewed through ritual. The dead were not forgotten but revisited, refreshed in red, made present again. Ochre kept memory vivid, as bright in ritual as in pigment. The symbolism deepened over time. To sprinkle red was to mark threshold, to signify transition. Living bodies wore pigment to dance. Dead bodies wore pigment to travel. The colour spoke across states of being, binding both. In this way, ochre became more than paint. It became language, shorthand for life, death, continuity. Consider the effect on children. To see a loved one dusted red was to remember them vividly, to link them with life and fire, not only decay. The colour softened grief, reimagined death as transformation. In this way, ochre became therapy as much as ritual, soothing pain through symbol. Archaeologists note too the care in these burials. Bodies are placed gently, limbs arranged, ochre sprinkled with deliberation. This tenderness tells us that emotion, not utility, guided the act. Burial isle ochre is love made visible, grief given form, memory pressed into soil. It is art as compassion, pigment as prayer. And through ochre, belief in afterlife deepens. If the dead needed colour, perhaps they still saw, still walked, still existed. If they needed offerings, perhaps they journeyed somewhere. Ochre implies expectation, that death is passage, that soul requires marking, that ritual matters. It whispers of spirit long before religion is named. Even now we echo the gesture. Coffins lined with flowers, bodies dressed in white, lips painted before burial, all descendants of ochre. We still mark dead with colour, still insist they look alive, still comfort ourselves with symbols. Ochre clings to us as legacy, iron in blood, pigment in soil. Picture yourself now, grinding ochre on stone. Your arms ache, dust clings to skin, air tastes of iron. You lift powder, sprinkle it across body of loved one. Red blooms across pale flesh, glowing in firelight. Others join, hands trembling, voices humming. The body transforms, no longer cold but vibrant, painted with life's hue. You step back, chest heavy, yet strangely eased. You know the one you loved will not walk again, yet in red they remain, marked, remembered, carried. As the grave closes, soil pressed firm, the red still shines faintly through cracks. The mound glows like ember in night. The group lingers, watching, whispering, then slowly they rise, return to fire, return to life. But the pigment clings, staining fingers, nails, skin. It does not wash away easily. For days, for weeks, the red will remind them of ritual, of loss, of bond, and so ochre carries the dead beyond grave, etched into living as well. The shallow grave is no longer mere pit. It is shrine marked by colour, charged with meaning. Through ochre, humans declare death is not silence, but passage. Flesh may fade, but spirit glows red, fire against dark. And in that glow you realize the first graves were not only places of mourning, they were canvases of belief, painted with earth's own blood. The red pigment lingers on your fingers, staining the tips like fire that will not fade. Yet as you look again at the graves of your ancestors, you notice something more than colour. Beside the bodies, tucked carefully into soil lie tools, a blade chipped from flint, a scraper worn smooth from use, a necklace of beads, a shell drilled for stringing. These are not accidents. They are gifts, offerings, companions for the journey into silence. The first grave goods, tools of the departed, reveal that death was no longer seen as the end of need. Even in burial, the dead carried with them objects of life. Imagine the moment. The group kneels around a shallow pit, body resting within. Someone steps forward holding a stone blade. It was the dead one's tool, used in countless hunts. The edge dulled and sharpened again. To give it away is sacrifice, for the group could use it still, but the mourner places it by the hand, pressing it into soil. The gesture says, "This was yours, it will remain yours, may it serve you beyond us." The group watches in silence, understanding that this is no waste, this is honor. Archaeologists have found such offerings across the world. In Kofsef Cave, alongside ochre-dusted skeletons, deer antlers were placed, as though crowning or equipping the dead. In Sungir, Russia, graves over 30,000 years old held bodies draped with beads, thousands of ivory ornaments strung onto clothing, requiring immense effort. At Dolny Vestanisa, figurines and tools were buried with the dead, even broken on purpose, perhaps to release their spirit for the journey. These goods are not random refuse. They are deliberate, intentional, costly. Why place tools with the dead? Perhaps to arm them for afterlife, ensuring they could hunt, carve, survive wherever they traveled. Perhaps as symbols, markers of status, the great hunter buried with blade, the leader with ornaments, the child with beads promising a life that might have been. Or perhaps the offerings were for the living, a way of saying, we give back what they gave us, we honor their labor, we remember their hands through their tools. Whatever the reason, the act is unmistakable. Art and survival blend into ritual, and tools themselves become sacred. Picture a necklace being removed from a mother's neck, strung bead by bead with care, then placed over her still chest. The beads rattle faintly, their holes worn from years of wear. The child watching trembles, not fully understanding but feeling awe. The necklace is more than ornament now. It is connection, reminder, promise. It will lie with her forever, glowing in soil, long after bodies above have forgotten. Humor, as always, sneaks in. Imagine someone placing a favorite stone into grave, muttering, "He never went anywhere without it. Now he can pester the spirits with it." The group chuckles, tension loosens, grief eases. Even in mourning, humans teased, remembered quirks, folded humor into love. Grave goods were not only solemn, they were personal, tokens of individuality preserved in soil. The tools chosen reveal intimacy. A blade polished smooth, a scraper chipped just so, a shell drilled with precision. These were objects held daily, shaped by hand, infused with memory. To bury them was to bury fragments of life itself. Archaeologists who lift these goods millennia later still see fingerprints in polish, still sense individuality in shape. Each object is biography, silent yet eloquent, and sometimes the goods were extravagant. Sungir's burials required thousands of hours of labor to carve beads from ivory, polish them, string them into garments. Such investment cannot be explained by utility. It is art as devotion, grief translated into endless work. The dead are dressed not for warmth but for eternity, adorned in memory, stitched bead by bead. These graves reveal that love outweighed survival, that meaning outweighed need. Children too received goods, tiny bones surrounded by beads, toys, pendants. This tenderness tells us that life's value was not measured only by years lived. Even those who barely breathed were honored, adorned, remembered. The goods beside them whispered of hope, of grief, of love unmeasured. Through these gestures, humanity declared that every life, however brief, deserved beauty. Some goods were broken before burial, blades snapped, figurines shattered. Archaeologists debate why, perhaps to kill the object, sending their spirit with the dead, perhaps to prevent their use by others, marking them sacred, perhaps to signify that life too was broken, incomplete. The act of breaking was itself ritual, transforming object into offering. Over time, patterns emerge. Hunters with weapons, women with beads, children with tokens. The grave becomes reflection of role, identity fixed in soil. In this way, burials teach later generations. Here lies hunter, here lies mother, here lies child. The goods are biography carved into earth, archive of identity long after voice is gone. Even now we echo the gesture. We bury rings with lovers, medals with soldiers, toys with children, coffins carry mementos, photos, letters. We still say, "Take this with you." We still hope the dead travel, still believe they might need company. The instinct has never left us. It is as natural as grief, as enduring as love. Think of the weight of these offerings for the living. To give a tool away is to sacrifice. To place beads is to lose time invested. To bury a weapon is to lose advantage. Yet humans chose loss over neglect, ritual over utility. In this way, grave goods reveal the birth of values beyond survival, values of meaning, memory, spirit. Archaeologists sometimes find graves looted, goods stolen. This too tells story that others valued them not only as symbols, but as objects, still powerful, still precious. Yet even when disturbed, graves retain aura of sacred. To rob one is to break taboo, to risk spirit's wrath. The existence of theft proves both the power and the danger of grave goods. The tools of the departed also deepen the sense of afterlife. If the dead carry blades, beads, ornaments, then surely they must walk somewhere, see somewhere, live somewhere. The goods are passports, tickets, provisions for journey beyond. Belief in another world is carved into flint, strung into beads, pressed into soil. Picture yourself at such a burial. You hold a small scraper, warm from your hand, rough from years of use. You hesitate, knowing it would serve you well in days ahead. But then you place it by the hand of your kin, pressing it gently into soil. Others add beads, shells, feathers. Together the grave fills with memory. You step back, chest aching but eased, knowing you have given not only body to earth, but love, devotion, meaning. As soil covers, as stones press down, the tools remain hidden but not lost. They wait, whispering through centuries, glowing with memory, and in their presence you realize humanity's first treasures were not hoarded but given away. The first gifts of art were not for living, but for dead. And in that generosity lies the essence of what it means to be human. The ochre has settled, the tools lie quiet in the soil, but then you notice something softer still. Around certain bones in certain graves, there lingers the faintest trace of pollen, clusters of microscopic grains that could not have blown in by accident. They come from flowers once laid beside the dead, blooms long since withered, but leaving their ghost behind. The act is tender, almost fragile, to gather blossoms and place them with the body, the first flowers for the fallen. Imagine the gesture. Someone kneels by the shallow pit, hands full of bright stems, perhaps yellow daisies, purple thistles, blue cornflowers, whatever grew nearby, plucked in haste or in thought. They spread them over the body, the petals brushing skin, the scent sharp against air. It is a gift that will not last, yet it matters. The body may decay, the flowers too, but the meaning remains. Love expressed in colour, fragrance, delicacy. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, where Neanderthal skeletons were found, Pollen from at least 7 types of flowers surrounded the bones. Some of those flowers, yarrow, cornflower, hyacinth, were not merely pretty, but medicinal, known to ease pain, soothe wounds, calm the body. Was this accident or intention? Perhaps the flowers were chosen for healing, placed as prayer that the dead be eased, comforted, blessed in departure. The grave itself becomes garden, burial becomes offering of scent. Picture the gathering of those flowers, a group walking quietly through meadow, heads bent, hands reaching for blooms. Children pluck brightly, laughing nervously, while elders choose carefully, knowing which carry fragrance, which carry medicine. They return with arms full, kneel, lay blossoms down. The body is covered not in soil first, but in petals, as though earth itself must be softened with beauty before accepting the dead. Why flowers? Perhaps because they are fragile, fleeting, alive with colour that fades too soon. To place them with dead is to acknowledge both life's beauty and its brevity. Perhaps because they carry scent, transforming smell of decay into perfume of memory, or perhaps simply because they are beautiful, and beauty itself is answer to grief. The first flowers in graves whisper that art is not only pigment or tool, but nature gathered, arranged, offered in love. And humour lingers even here. Imagine a child plucking weeds, tossing them proudly into grave, announcing, "Look, the prettiest ones." The adults smile, though weeds are plain, stems prickly, yet they leave them there, because the gesture matters more than the bloom. Even laughter becomes offering, love carried through chuckles and mistakes. Flowers also connect dead to world beyond grave. They are seeds of earth, blooming towards sun, living where body cannot. To bury with flowers is to tie dead to cycle, to remind living that life returns each spring. The blossoms fade, but their memory insists. Death is not only ending, but part of turning wheel. In this way, flowers soften fear, teach hope. Some graves bear traces of entire beds of plants beneath bodies, as though corpses were laid on fragrant cushions. The thought is moving, that mourners wanted comfort for dead, softness instead of hard soil, fragrance instead of stench. These gestures speak of compassion, of care extended beyond breath. They reveal that grief was not only about survival of group, but about gentleness toward individual. Picture again Shanidar Cave, a body laid curled, ochre dusted, antlers beside, flowers spread above. The torchlight flickers, shadows stretch, and in silence you smell faint perfume rising from grave. It does not triumph, not spell, but tenderness. The dead is not only buried, but adorned. Death itself is softened by bloom. Archaeologists debate. Could pollen have drifted in? Could animals have carried flowers? Yet the clustering, the kinds of plants, the pattern of placement suggest intention. If true, then Neanderthals, so often mocked as brutish, carried blossoms into graves, proving their humanity, their capacity for tenderness and beauty. The flowers whisper across time, we cared, we loved, we honoured. And flowers hint at belief too. If healing plants were chosen, perhaps mourners hoped dead would continue to need comfort, even in spirit. If bright blooms were chosen, perhaps they were meant to light path, to charm spirits, to please gods. Whatever the belief, the act itself reveals conviction that beauty has power, power to ease, to guide, to transform. Children watching must have remembered, to see flowers laid was lesson, that beauty belongs even in sorrow, that grief demands gift. They grew up knowing that death requires gentleness, that loss is not silent, but adorned through repetition. The act became tradition, tradition became ritual, ritual became sacred. Flowers in graves became part of memory, part of identity, part of faith, and even now we echo it. We still lay flowers on coffins, scatter petals on graves, send wreaths to funerals, We still believe blooms speak what words cannot, that they whisper love, comfort, remembrance. We still adorn death with fragrance, as though nature itself must help us grieve. The instinct is unchanged. Flowers soften sorrow, bridge silence, carry beauty where beauty feels absent. Think of your own memory, walking through cemetery, seeing graves covered with roses, lilies, daisies, each bloom a gesture, fragile yet strong. You know they will wilt, but you place them anyway because the act is not about lasting, but about meaning. That act, thousands of years old, is Neanderthal instinct alive in you. Even humor persists today. Children still place wild flowers on graves, reeds mistaken for roses, smiles breaking tears. Families still laugh softly through funerals, remembering quirks, jokes, stories. Death has never been only solemn. It has always been softened by laughter, by flowers, by love. So tonight, as you rest, imagine kneeling by a shallow grave in cave. Your hands are full of blooms, stems damp with dew, petals bright in torchlight. You spread them gently, covering chest, face, arms of the one you loved. The fragrance rises, mixing with smoke, with soil, with ochre. You step back, chest aching but eased. The grave is no longer only earth. It is garden, shrine, altar of beauty. Flowers glow in silence, whispering, "You were loved. You will be remembered. You are not gone entirely." And as you walk away, the scent lingers on your fingers, clings to your hair. For days, you carry it, breathing both grief and comfort. You realize that beauty is stronger than silence, that flowers bloom even in shadow of death. Humanity has always known this truth, that life must answer death with color, and so the first graves became gardens, and we still walk among them, laying blossoms for the fallen. The petals have faded into soil, their fragrance gone, but their meaning still alive. Yet when you look closer into ancient graves, you notice something that pierces more sharply than tools, more tenderly than flowers. Some of the bodies are small, heartbreakingly small, infants swaddled in ochre, children laid with beads, tiny bones curled like seeds in the earth. These burials are the clearest proof of love that stretches beyond survival, for even the youngest, who gave little in labor or hunt, were grieved, adorned, remembered. The children of grief whisper to us across tens of thousands of years that humanity could not bear to let even its smallest souls vanish unmarked. Picture the scene, a young mother cradling the still body of her infant, her face streaked with tears, her voice broken. The group gathers, hushed, uncertain, yet drawn to share the weight. They dig a small hollow in earth, line it with flowers, sprinkle ochre into this cradle of soil. The child is laid, still curled as though in sleep. A necklace of beads, perhaps the mother's own, is placed at the chest. The group chants softly, rocking, their grief vibrating through silence. In that moment, humanity reveals its truest heart, that love is not measured by years lived, but by bonds that death cannot sever. Archaeologists have uncovered such graves. At Kafse, the body of a child was laid with antlers across its chest, as though crowned. At Sungir, 2 children were buried head to head, their bodies covered in thousands of ivory beads, fox teeth, carved spears, gifts that required immense effort. One was perhaps 13, the other only 10. Their graves are among the richest ever found, a statement that even those who did not live long deserved honor, equal to the greatest hunters. These burials cry out across time. Children mattered, children were loved, children were mourned. Why give so much to the young? Perhaps because their loss was the sharpest grief. To lose an elder is sorrow, to lose a child is despair. It is future stolen, promise extinguished, laughter silenced before it grew, the lavish gifts, the beads, the ochre, are offerings of hope. Hope that the child might live elsewhere. Hope that they might continue in spirit. Hope that they mattered enough to merit beauty. The grave becomes both cradle and shrine, memory and prayer, fused into one. And children's burials tell us more, that humanity already imagined continuity beyond breath. If children were adorned, equipped with tools, dressed in beads, then surely mourners believed they would need such things. The child buried with a toy is not only honoured, but provided for, a gesture of care extending into imagined afterlife. Such tenderness reveals belief as much as grief, that the child's journey is not ended, only changed. Picture the mother removing her necklace and placing it around her child's neck. Her hands tremble, her eyes close, her lips whisper, "Take this with you." The gesture is universal, timeless. We still do the same, tucking toys into coffins, placing photos beside infants lost too soon. The instinct is unchanged. We cannot let them go empty-handed. We cannot let them go without memory. And even in sorrow, humour softens the ache. Imagine a grieving father placing a pebble-shaped like animal into the grave, muttering through tears, "So you can chase rabbits in the other world." The group smiles sadly, chuckling through grief, even in death. Love laughs, because to remember a child's playfulness is to honour their spirit fully. Humour here is not disrespect, but devotion. Some graves show infants swaddled, their bodies tucked with care, as though still embraced by womb. Ochre dusted like blanket, beads strung like lullaby. The grave itself becomes cradle, earth rocking child into eternity. The image is piercing, yet comforting, that even in death, a child is not abandoned, but held, soothed, cherished. At Sungir, the labour invested in children's graves is staggering. Each bead took hours to carve, polish, drill, string. Thousands were buried with each child, meaning entire communities must have worked for years, perhaps decades, to create them. To give all of this to 2 young lives shows that identity, belonging, love were not reserved for elders. Even those who barely began life were central, woven into fabric of meaning. This investment also reveals identity of community. To adorn children so lavishly was to declare, "We value all of us, even those who cannot yet hunt, cannot yet bear children, cannot yet lead." It is a statement of compassion, of humanity beyond survival. It tells us that culture had already leapt past mere pragmatism into ethics of love, tenderness, remembrance. Children's burials also bound groups together. Grief shared is grief softened. The loss of one child becomes sorrow of all, expressed through collective effort, digging grave, crafting beads, sprinkling ochre, laying flowers. Each act distributes grief, prevents it from crushing one alone. Burial becomes therapy, ritual as medicine, healing wound through communal love. Picture the moment after burial when the group lingers, silent, watching soil cover small body. Then one elder sighs, looks at stars, and whispers, "Perhaps the child has gone there." Eyes lift, tears fall, hope stirs. In this way, children's deaths may have birthed first myths of heaven, of sky as home of souls, of stars as lights carried by lost children. Belief in afterlife may have grown not from elders, but from grief for young. Humour, again, eases despair. Imagine children in group pretending to be the lost child's playmates, chasing each other around grave, laughing loudly. At first adults hush them, but then they smile, realizing this too is memorial. This too is tribute. Laughter becomes hymn, joy becomes offering, play becomes remembrance. Even in sorrow, life insists on itself. The graves of children also shape future identity. Each return to burial site reminded group of loss, but also of bond. Children grew up visiting graves of siblings, cousins, friends, learning that memory endures, that love outlives death. These visits forge continuity, linking generations through grief. The dead child became ancestor, remembered in story, shaping identity of tribe, and even now we echo them. Cemeteries are filled with toys, flowers, tiny shoes, stuffed animals placed on children's graves, parents tuck notes into coffins, siblings leave drawings, strangers leave flowers. We still cannot bear to let children go unadorned, unremembered. Their graves are still cradles of love, still shrines of grief, still gardens of hope. The instinct persists unchanged. Think of your own memory of seeing a child's grave, small and tender, covered with toys and blooms. The sight cuts deeply, but it also affirms humanity's greatest strength, that even in deepest loss, we insist on love, we insist on memory, we insist on beauty. This is what makes us human, what made us human even in caves of long ago. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavy, imagine yourself kneeling by such a grave. The child lies swaddled in ochre, beads strung across chest, flowers spread gently. You place a small shell by hand, whispering farewell. Around you, others chant softly. Some laugh gently, remembering the child's smile. The grave closes, soil covers, but memory lingers, glowing like ember. You rise, chest heavy, heart aching, yet you feel something else too, that the child is not lost entirely, that they live in story, in symbol, in memory. The children of grief remain forever, teaching us that love does not end with breath. The graves of children linger in your mind, but as you travel further into the story of our dead, you begin to notice another practice, stranger, more unsettling, yet deeply human. Not all the departed were carried outside to lie beneath cairns or flowers. Some were kept close within the very places where the living ate, slept and gathered. Skulls resting by hearths, bones arranged in corners, fragments placed beneath floors. The ancestors did not always vanish into earth. Sometimes they remained among the living, companions of daily life. These were the ancestors in the hearth, the first home shrines of memory. Picture the scene, a family huddled near fire in winter. Above them, hanging from a shelf of rock, rests a human skull, its surface worn smooth from years of touch. Children glance at it nervously, sometimes giggle, sometimes bow. When storms rage outside, the elder gestures toward the skull and murmurs, "They protect us." They watch, the fire crackles, shadows dance across bone, and the family feels less alone. Archaeologists have uncovered such practices in sites like Jericho, where plastered skulls with shells for eyes were kept long after death, displayed in homes. Earlier still, in Paleolithic contexts, skulls were arranged in caves near hearths, sometimes painted or marked with ochre. These are not careless remains. They are curated, honored, transformed from bone into relic. The dead did not vanish, they became present. Why keep skulls? Perhaps because they carried identity most vividly. The face, even when stripped of flesh, still whispered of person. To hold skull was to hold memory tangible, to converse with ancestor directly, or perhaps because skulls were believed to house spirit, power, essence. To keep them near fire was to keep spirit warm, engaged, protective. The hearth was not only for cooking, but for communion. The act could be tender. Imagine a mother smoothing her fingers along curve of child's skull, whispering lullaby, though ears no longer hear. Imagine a hunter laying his father's skull near hearth before journey, asking for luck, for strength. These gestures reveal that death did not end relationship. Love and dependence continued, mediated by bone, and humor found place here too. Picture a group teasing each other around fire. Grandfather's skull is watching, better share your meat. Laughter ripples, tension eases, yet reverence remains. The skull becomes participant, still part of community, still woven into jokes and fears. Even in death, ancestor remains one of them. Sometimes bones were buried beneath house floors. Families literally built life atop their dead, each dwelling layered with generations. To sleep above ancestors was to sleep within lineage, to feel protected by continuity. Children grew up knowing the ground itself held family, that identity was literally beneath their feet. This closeness shaped belonging, binding blood to Other times bones were painted, plastered, reshaped. At Jericho, skulls were covered with plaster to restore features, shells pressed into sockets for eyes. The dead were remade, reanimated, displayed like portraits. To look at them was to look into past, to see ancestors face to face. These skulls were not grim, they were honored, cherished, given beauty even in silence. Archaeologists also note that not all bones were kept. Skulls dominate, sometimes long bones, rarely entire skeletons. This selectivity suggests symbolism. The head for identity, perhaps arms for strength, legs for journey. Each bone carried meaning chosen deliberately, not randomly. The dead were curated like memory itself, condensed into relics of significance. Picture children growing up in such homes. They touch skulls, ask questions, hear stories. This was your grandmother. She sang at night. She laughed loudly. The skull becomes not frightening, but familiar. Bridge between past and present. Memory is embodied, not abstract. The dead are not invisible. They are household companions. Yet unease lingered. To keep dead close meant constant reminder of mortality. Some may have feared spirits lingering too near, whispering in dreams, stirring in shadows. Rituals must have balanced this fear. Offerings of food at hearth, whispers of gratitude, chants of appeasement. The ancestors at hearth were both comfort and danger, requiring respect, ceremony, care. Even now, echoes persist. In some cultures, ancestral altars still hold photos, relics, even bones. Families burn incense, leave food, whisper prayers. In Catholic homes, relics of saints are treasured. In Mexico, Dia de los Muertos, altars welcome ancestors with offerings. The instinct to keep dead near, to weave them into daily life, has never left us. The skulls at Jericho are not so distant from the photos on our mantels. Humor persists too. Families today still joke about dead relatives watching, scolding, guiding. Don't steal cookies, Grandma's picture is right there. The laughter carries ancient echo, reminder that memory blends grief with play. Ancestors at hearth were likely teased in same way, woven into humor as much as into reverence. The presence of bones also anchored identity. To keep ancestor near was to prove belonging. Lineage, claim to place. Strangers could be shown skulls. These are ours. We were here before you. Bones became deeds, proof of heritage, anchors of continuity. The hearth was both home and archive, memory preserved in bone. And sometimes, bones may have been used in ritual performance. Skulls painted, carried into dances, passed hand to hand in ceremonies. Imagine circle around fire, shaman holding skull high, voice trembling. They speak through me. The group chants, dances, weep. The ancestor is present, invoked, embodied. Performance merges with relic, art with memory. Archaeologists debate whether such practices were reverent or macabre, but evidence suggests tenderness. Skulls plastered lovingly, placed carefully, painted with beauty are not trophies, they are family. To live with them was to live with past alive, to blur line between death and life. The hearth became both kitchen and shrine, both warmth and memory. Picture yourself now, sitting by fire, watching flames lick stones. Beside you, on ledge, rests skull of ancestor. Its hollow eyes glow in light, its curves smooth from touch. You feel not fear but presence, a strange comfort, as though someone still watches, still cares. You murmur thanks, share bite of food, laugh softly at memory. Death has not stolen them fully. They're still here, still part of circle. The skull by the hearth glows faintly in firelight, its presence both comfort and reminder. But not every ancestor could be kept within the home. Not every bone nestled in daily life. Some required greater resting places, deeper silence, chambers of stone and shadow where generations could lie together. These were the burial caves, natural hollows transformed into sanctuaries, spaces set apart where the living brought their dead, not to linger among cooking fires, but to dwell in solemnity. Here humanity began to create cemeteries, vast chambers where bones gathered, layer upon layer, telling stories of entire communities. Picture the approach to such a cave. The mourners walk slowly, bearing the body wrapped in skins, or carried simply in arms. Torches flicker, smoke rising into dusk. Children trail behind, whispering, half afraid, half curious. The entrance looms, dark and cold, yawning like mouth of mountain. To step inside is to leave ordinary world, to enter space of spirits. The air shifts, cooler, heavier, filled with scent of damp stone. Shadows leap, echo magnifies each step. Already the cave feels alive, humming with presence of countless dead. Inside, the chamber opens wide. Walls glisten with mineral sheen, water dripping from ceiling, floor uneven and echoing. In corners lie bones of earlier burials, some still whole, others scattered. Skulls peer faintly through dust, femurs stacked like logs, ribs collapsed into pale heaps. These are not accidents, they are arrangements, careful placements by generations past. The cave is not chaos, but order, a vast archive of ancestors. The body is lowered gently onto stone floor, or into hollow carved by hands and tools. Ochre may be sprinkled, flowers scattered, beads placed. Sometimes entire families are grouped together, a mother laid beside child, a father close by. Over time, caves become layered with kin, each generation stacked atop another, bones mingling, identities blending. To walk among them is to walk through lineage embodied. Archaeologists find such burial caves across Europe and the Near East. At Dolní Věstonice, clusters of skeletons lie together, some adorned, some plain. At Skul and Kofse, bodies were arranged in caves, ochre scattered, tools left. At later sites, chambers hold dozens, even hundreds of skeletons, evidence of repeated return. These caves were not random shelters. They were chosen, sanctified, remembered. They became places where living met dead, where ritual was repeated across centuries. Why choose caves? Perhaps because they felt womb-like, protective, sheltering. To lay dead in cave was to return them to earth's embrace, to womb of stone, preparing for rebirth. Perhaps because caves echoed, their acoustics amplifying chants, making voices sound like spirit responses, or perhaps because caves endured, their permanence ensured graves were safe from weather, from predators, from forgetting. To bury in cave was to grant longevity, to carve memory into landscape itself, and the rituals within were not silent. Picture mourners chanting, the sound magnified by stone, voices blending into eerie chorus. Drums may have echoed, flutes shrilled, feet stamped, shadows danced across walls. The dead lay still, yet ritual made them present, summoned them into performance. The cave became both tomb and theatre, shrine and stage. Even humour could enter. Imagine a child echoing chant too loudly, the sound booming comically, startling group into laughter. The solemnity breaks for moments, smiles spreading, before chants resume. Humanity has always softened grief with giggles, even in caves of silence. The dead were honored with seriousness, but remembered with joy too. Burial caves also created communal memory. Not one grave here, one there, but many together. Bones mingled across families. The dead no longer belonged to individual alone, but to group. Ancestors became collective, heritage of all. Each visit to cave reinforced identity. We are people who bury here. These are our dead. This is our home. And caves invited return. Unlike shallow graves in fields, burial caves could be revisited, bones touched, arranged, painted anew. Archaeologists find evidence of repeated handling. Skulls moved, bones grouped, ochre reapplied. Death was not final separation, but ongoing relationship. Ancestors were not forgotten, but tended, curated, cherished across centuries. Consider children entering such caves. Their eyes widen at rows of skulls. Their fingers brush beads still gleaming in dust. They whisper, listen to stories of who lies where, of ancestors' deeds. For them, cave is classroom, teaching lineage, memory, continuity. To grow up near burial cave is to grow up with constant reminder, you are not alone, you walk among generations. In time, burial caves became sacred centers. Rituals may have been performed not only for dead, but for living. Initiation of youths, healing of sick, marriages blessed in shadow of ancestors. To gather in cave was to gather with entire history of group. The stone walls became witness, guardians, silent yet powerful. Archaeologists sometimes find art near burials, painted symbols, carved figurines. These may have been offerings, or simply extensions of ritual. To paint beside dead was to merge art and memory, to honor ancestors with beauty. The cave thus became gallery of grief, archive of belief, museum of identity. Even now, we echo burial caves in mausoleums, catacombs, crypts. We build chambers where many rest together, bones stacked, coffins aligned, walls lined with names. We still enter such places, with hushed voices, feeling awe, fear, reverence. The instinct remains, to gather dead together, to create sacred chambers of memory. Humor lingers too. Tourists in catacombs joke nervously. Families still share funny stories at crypts. Even in most solemn chambers, laughter softens fear, reminding us that the dead were once alive, that they too laugh. Burial caves surely heard chuckles alongside chants, giggles alongside laments. Picture yourself now, stepping into such a cave. Torch in hand, you breathe damp air, hear drip of water, see skulls gleaming faintly in stone. You kneel, place bead by ancestor's hand, whisper prayer. Around you, chants rise, echo multiply, shadows leap. You feel surrounded not only by living, but by thousands of dead, their presence pressing like warm cloak. Fear fades, replaced by belonging. This is your people, your lineage, your story carved in bone. As you step back into night, cave behind you hums with memory. You know you will return, with offerings, with children, with new dead to join old. The cave is no longer hollow, it is heart of your people, beating in silence, pulsing in stone. Burial caves are not endings, but anchors, binding generations across time. The caves echo with memory, the bones whispering in silence. But as time passes, people begin to mark their burials above ground as well. The earth itself becomes canvas, stones lifted, piled, balanced, arranged in shapes that speak not only to mourners, but to all who pass by. These are the first cairns, the first markers of stone, monuments to the dead that rise against sky. With them, grief steps beyond grave itself into landscape, announcing to world, that here lies memory, here lies meaning. Picture the act. A group gathers after burial, standing in silence. One picks up a rock, sets it upon mound of earth. Another follows, placing stone beside stone. Soon a pile rises, rough but deliberate, weight pressing memory into permanence. The cairn says, "This is not just soil, not just chance. Here lies one of us." Each visitor adds another rock, and the mound grows, not by one hand but by many. Archaeologists find such stone markers across prehistoric sites. Simple piles cover shallow graves, others grow into small mounds, some carefully ringed with upright stones. These are not accidents of geology, they are human signatures, gestures of permanence. Unlike flowers that fade, unlike pigment that weathers, stones endure. To mark grave with stone is to declare remembrance for generations. Why stones? Perhaps because they are heavy, resistant, lasting. They shield body from scavengers, protect memory from erasure. Perhaps because they are abundant, available to all, yet transformable into symbols. To lift stone is effort, sacrifice, devotion. Each rock added is act of love, of belonging, of solidarity. A cairn is not built at once, but across time, layer by layer, each mourner contributing grief turned into gesture. Imagine children joining ritual, carrying pebbles with solemn faces, placing them gently on mound. They feel part of ceremony, their small act woven into larger whole. Later, they return, add more stones, learn that grief is not moment but continuity. In this way, cairn becomes living structure, growing with memory, expanding with love. Sometimes stones are set upright, tall against horizon. These menhirs mark not only grave but presence. Standing like sentinels, they can be seen from distance, guiding travelers, reminding wanderers of ancestors below. To walk by is to remember, to feel awe, to feel watched. Upright stones are voices of dead speaking into landscape. Humor still flickers in these rituals. Imagine someone struggling to carry rock too large, stumbling, dropping it with crash. The group laughs, even in grief, teasing. Ancestor will laugh too at your clumsiness. The laughter lingers, easing heaviness, weaving love with mirth. Even cairns, solemn as they are, carry echoes of joy. Over time, stone markers grow elaborate. Small mounds swell into barrows, ringed with stones, topped with markers. Communities invest immense labor, hauling rocks across fields, stacking them with precision. These are not only for individuals, but for groups, monuments to many. Burial becomes architecture, grief becomes landscape itself. Consider how these markers shaped memory. Unlike graves hidden in caves, cairns stood in open, visible to all. They proclaimed presence. We were here, we remain here. This land is ours. They anchored communities to territory, binding identity to place. The dead, through their markers, claimed earth for living. Archaeologists note cairns often align with paths, rivers, horizons. Perhaps they guided travelers, marking routes with memory. To pass cairn was to remember ancestor, to greet them, to add stone. In this way, burial markers became waypoints of both geography and spirit. Landscape itself was stitched with remembrance. Children grew up with cairns as landmarks. They played nearby, heard stories of those beneath, learned lineage through stone. For them, cairns were not grim but familiar, woven into daily life, teaching continuity across time. They knew to add stone was to honor, to belong, to join chain of memory. Markers of stone also carried warning. To outsiders, cairns declared territory, ancestors, claim. To disturb them was taboo. To disrespect them was to risk anger of both living and dead. In this way, cairns were both memorials and defences, monuments of grief and of power. Even now, we echo them. Cemeteries filled with gravestones, markers carved with names, headstones rising in rows, all are descendants of cairns. We still pile stone above our dead, still carve messages into rock, still insist memory must be etched in landscape. The instinct to anchor grief in stone has never left us. Humour persists too. Today, visitors leave pebbles on graves, a gesture both solemn and playful. Children carve hearts into headstones. Families laugh at epitaphs. Laughter continues to walk alongside stone, just as it did at first cairns. Picture yourself now, kneeling by ancient mound. You lift stone, heavy and rough, press it onto pile. It clatters, joins others, fits into weight of grief. Around you others do same, stones rising together into shape. You step back, see cairn taller, stronger, enduring. The body beneath is gone, but memory above endures in stone. You feel lighter, knowing grief is shared, knowing ancestor is marked, known, remembered. As years pass, the cairn grows. Travellers add stones, children contribute pebbles, elders bring boulders. Soon the mound is high, visible for miles, landmark in wilderness. The ancestor beneath is no longer one among many, but presence of community, spirit in landscape. The cairn hums with memory, every stone a voice, every layer a story. And as you drift tonight into sleep, imagine walking among these ancient markers, stones piled high, upright sentinels against horizon, cairns glowing in dusk. You place hand on rough surface, feel warmth of sun, coolness of night. You hear whispers of ancestors, feel weight of belonging. The markers of stone remind you, grief endures, but so does love. Carved into earth, piled into sky, the cairns rise against the horizon, stones stacked high, upright markers standing like silent guardians. But if you step closer, you realize that stone alone cannot contain grief. Grief spills outward into voices, bodies, air itself. Around burials, mourners do not remain silent forever. They cry out, wail, sing, stamp, dance. The weight of mourning is too great to keep inside. It must be released into ritual, into sound and movement, into communal performance. Humanity did not only bury its dead, it learned to mourn them aloud. Picture the scene, a body lowered into shallow grave, soil pressed, stones stacked. At first there is silence, heavy, aching. Then one voice rises, high and sharp, a cry that splits air. Another follows, lower, trembling, and then another, until group is keening together. The sound is not word, not language, but raw emotion made audible. It shakes air, echoes through hills, frightens birds into flight. Mourning becomes chorus, grief turned into music. Archaeologists cannot hear these sounds, but they see evidence in art and ethnography. Even today, cultures across world practice ritual wailing, ululation, keening. These gestures are nearly universal, suggesting deep, ancient roots. It is likely that Paleolithic people too lifted their voices at graves, crying in unison, transforming private sorrow into communal lament. The sound itself became offering, gift to dead, proof of love. And it was not only voices. Bodies too joined in, some stamped feet, shaking ground, others rocked back and forth, arms raised, heads bowed. Movement became part of mourning, dance of grief. To sway was to embody ache, to stamp was to resist silence, to tremble was to show sorrow without words. Even without choreography, mourning became performance, binding group through shared rhythm. Imagine a mother collapsing onto soil, clutching ground where child lies. Others gather, pulling her up, rocking her gently, swaying with her. Soon entire group rocks together, as though tide of grief carries them. The rhythm soothes, unites, gives shape to loss. The body below is silent, but above, living bodies speak through movement, through sound, through tears. Humor, unexpectedly, has always entered mourning too. Picture an elder, voice hoarse from wailing, suddenly hiccuping mid-cry. The sound jars group, laughter bursts through tears. For a moment sorrow eases, replaced by chuckle. Then lament resumes, heavier but softened. Humanity has always known that mourning cannot be endless weight. It must breathe with laughter, even if brief. The weight of mourning also birthed songs, cries stretched into melodies, laments into patterns repeated generation after generation. At funerals, words became chants, chants became hymns. These were not entertainment, but incantations, meant to soothe dead, to guide them, to ease living. Archaeologists speculate that music itself may have grown from mourning as much as from celebration. The first songs may have been cries for dead, shaped into rhythm, passed down as tradition. Picture a funeral chant, voices rise, fall, repeat, circling like waves. The melody is simple, easy for all to join. Even children hum, tears, streaking cheeks. The song becomes larger than any one grief. It becomes collective memory, teaching next generation how to mourn. Through song, mourning becomes ritual, grief becomes tradition. And mourning was not only sound and movement, it was objects too. Some groups smeared ash across faces, others painted skin with ochre, others cut hair, tore clothes, scarred flesh. These marks told all who saw, I grieve, I have lost, I carry sorrow. Mourning became visible, social, embodied. The dead were honored, not only in grave, but on bodies of living. Imagine a father shaving his head, leaving scalp bare as sign of loss. Others follow, each carrying baldness as badge of grief. Weeks later, hair grows back, and with it, healing. The ritual becomes cycle, marking time, easing ache. Mourning teaches not only how to honor dead, but how to return to life. Archaeologists see traces, bones with deliberate cuts, ornaments broken and worn during mourning, ash smeared on remains. These gestures are echoes of sorrow made physical. They remind us that grief was not hidden but shared, not silent but embodied. And yet, mourning also carried belief. To wail was to call spirit, to sing was to guide them, to paint skin was to show kinship even after death. Mourning was communication, bridge between worlds, conversation with invisible. The dead were not gone. They were listening, watching, waiting. The sounds, the movements, the marks reassured both sides. We remember, we care, we honor. Children watching learned too. They saw adults cry, sing, paint, dance, and understood. Grief is not secret. It is shared. They grew up knowing that when loss comes, you do not hide, but express, not alone but together. In this way, mourning shaped social bonds, teaching compassion, unity, empathy. Over time, mourning grew elaborate. Funerals stretched into days, weeks. Entire communities gathered, wailing in shifts, singing without pause. Ritual objects were crafted just for mourning. Drums, rattles, flutes. Some groups even hired mourners, ensuring voices never ceased. The weight of mourning demanded collective effort. No one left to grieve alone. Even now, we echo these practices. Funerals still ring with hymns, with cries, with laughter through tears. We still wear black, still cut flowers, still mark bodies with symbols of grief. We still gather, sing, sway, dance, weep. Mourning remains public, ritualized, necessary. The instinct to release sorrow communally has never left us. Humor continues too. At wakes, families share funny stories, laugh through tears, remembering quirks of lost. Jokes ease silence. Laughter honors spirit. Just as hiccups once broke ancient whales, mourning is always wait, but never only wait. Humanity insists on balance, on remembering joy within loss. Picture yourself now at ancient funeral. The body lies beneath stones, ochre dust still bright, tools and flowers beside. Around you, voices rise in keening, feet stamp, arms sway. You join, your throat roar, your chest heaving. The sound grows, fills air, echoes through hills. You feel grief leave body, rising with song, shared by all. The body is gone, but spirit is not. The dead hear, the living heal. Mourning becomes bridge, weight carried by many, transformed by ritual into meaning. And as night falls, the wails soften, the chants fade, the fire crackles low. Silence returns, but it is different silence, softer, lighter, bearable. You lie down, tears drying, chest still heavy, but soothed. Around you, others sleep, breath steady, grief shared. Above, stars wheel, ancestors watching. The weight of mourning has been carried together, transformed into memory, into song, into tradition. Humanity has learned not only to bury its dead, but to mourn them, to honor sorrow as much as life. The songs fade, the wails soften, the cairn of stones settles into night. Yet something lingers beyond grief, beyond ritual, beyond the ache of absence. When the living look at a grave, they do not see only body beneath. They begin to wonder, where is the person gone? What remains of them? Does spirit linger in cave, in hearth, in cairn, in stars? This is the birth of belief, the sense that death is not final, that another world shadows this one. The first graves whisper not only of sorrow but of faith in unseen journeys. Picture the moment when someone asks quietly, "If they are gone, why do I still feel them?" The group listens, nods. They too have felt presence in dreams, in wind and fire crackle. They murmur, maybe the dead walk still though we cannot see them. Maybe they travel somewhere, need tools, need beads, need flowers. The grave becomes doorway, not prison. Death becomes transition, not annihilation. Archaeologists see hints of this belief in burial patterns. Bodies laid curled like fetuses, suggesting rebirth. Heads facing east as though awaiting sunrise. Goods placed beside as though for travel. These choices whisper of conviction. The dead go somewhere. The ochre, the tools, the flowers are not only symbols for living, but provisions for journey. Faith has begun to sprout, fragile but enduring, and dreams surely fed this belief. Imagine a mourner sleeping near fresh grave, dreaming vividly of loved one walking, speaking, laughing. They wake, trembling, convinced. The dead are not gone. Dreams become proof. Experience becomes doctrine. Soon stories spread. I saw them in dream. They are safe. They are watching. Dream and belief weave into faith, passed across generations. The stars, too, invited imagination. Lying awake, mourners saw sky burn with light. Could those be souls travelling upward? Could ancestors shine as stars? Children asked, and elders answered with stories, yes. The dead become light above. Thus myths are born, explanations sprouting from grief. Even humour shaped belief. Imagine someone muttering after a poor hunt. Grandfather must be angry. He took the deer with him. The group laughs, but the idea lingers. Perhaps ancestors influence life. Perhaps they meddle, reward, punish. Soon laughter becomes story, story becomes belief. The invisible gains power through humour, as much as through sorrow. Over time, rituals deepen. Food left at graves, fires lit for spirits, chants repeated to guide souls. Offerings become duty, ensuring ancestors are pleased, ensuring they aid living. The dead are not severed but recruited, transformed into guardians, mediators, allies. To neglect them is to risk misfortune. To honor them is to gain protection. Belief thus binds generations, intertwining living and dead. Archaeologists sometimes find multiple burials revisited, graves reopened to add goods, bones rearranged. This suggests relationship ongoing, not finished at death. The living return to converse, to gift, to seek help. The grave becomes altar, ancestor becomes spirit companion. Faith evolves from memory into theology, practice into religion. Children learn early. They see elders whisper at graves, leave beads, murmur prayers. They absorb conviction that dead remain, that spirits listen. Belief becomes inheritance, passed not by words alone but by gesture, ritual, symbol. For them, the grave is never silence. It is presence. The natural world reinforces faith. Winds howl like voices. Fire crackles like speech. Rivers murmur like whispers. The world feels alive, filled with echoes of ancestors. To believe in afterlife is not leap, but instinct, born of constant reminders in nature. Every shadow, every dream, every echo becomes sign, and with belief comes comfort. Grief lessons when one feels dead are not gone, only shifted. To think child becomes star, mother becomes bird, father becomes mountain, is to soften sorrow with hope. Belief heals. Belief sustains. Belief transforms despair into meaning. Humanity clings to this balm, weaving it into every burial, every ritual, every chant. Belief also disciplines. If ancestors watch, then behavior matters. To steal, to fight, to neglect duties risks angering spirits. To share, to honor, to sing pleases them. Thus morality is born from graves, ethics from ancestors. Religion's roots are in soil as much as in sky. Archaeologists at sites like Sungir or Dolny Vestany marvel at lavish offerings, thousands of beads, carved figurines, decorated clothing. These were not needed for burial, but for belief. Communities labored honor dead, convinced their devotion would matter beyond death. Such investment reveals depth of faith, power of conviction, willingness to sacrifice for unseen. Even now, we echo them. We bury dead with rings, photos, letters, flowers. We pray at graves, speak to headstones, light candles. We believe in heaven, in reincarnation, in spirits, in memory beyond death. Across millennia, the instinct has not faded. We cannot accept silence. We must believe in something more. Humor still coexists. Families joke at funerals, teasing that ancestor is watching from above, or still bossing us. Laughter eases grief, but also affirms belief that dead remain, active and present. Humor, sorrow, and faith are not separate. They entwine, shaping humanity's response to death. Picture yourself now at ancient grave. You kneel, place bead, whisper prayer. You feel wind brush cheek, fire crackle near, stars blaze above. You sense presence, not absence, watching, listening. You murmur thanks, ask for guidance, feel lighter. Belief has grown inside you, rooted in grief, watered by memory, glowing in ritual. You rise, walk away, but feel ancestor at your side. Death has not ended bond. As night deepens, the cairn stands silent, the chants fade, the stars wheel. Yet within you stirs quiet certainty that death is passage, not end, that ancestors linger, guide, guard, that graves are not only for memory but for faith. Humanity has begun to believe, and in belief we find strength to endure, to love, to hope. Belief softens grief, but it also sharpens fear. If the dead journey beyond, if spirits linger, if ancestors watch, then death is not only passage but power, and power can be appeased, bargained with, even fed. As graves grow more elaborate, you begin to notice burials that unsettle, skeletons with broken bones, bodies laid in strange positions, offerings that hint at blood spilled deliberately. Alongside love and tenderness, there rises something darker, violence and sacrifice, rituals born from conviction that spirits must be honored not only with beads and flowers, but with life itself. Picture a group standing over grave of leader. Around body lie not only tools and ornaments, but other skeletons, younger, whole, placed with care, yet clearly not dead of age. Perhaps they were attendants, perhaps captives, perhaps kin chosen to follow leader into death. Their presence whispers of sacrifice, of belief that the dead need company, that great souls require entourage in afterlife. Love becomes terrifying, devotion becomes violent, faith demands flesh. Archaeologists find such graves across prehistory. At sites in Russia and Central Asia, high-status burials contain multiple individuals, some showing signs of trauma. In ancient Mesopotamia, royal tombs held attendants laid beside rulers, richly adorned but likely slain to accompany. Even in earlier contexts, hints remain: bones with cut marks, evidence of binding, signs that not all deaths were natural. These burials remind us that religion was never only gentle, it could wound as well as heal. Why such sacrifice? Perhaps fear, that spirit of leader would be angry if alone. Perhaps hope, that loyal followers would serve in next world. Perhaps power, elites showing dominance, even in death, commanding lives beyond breath. Whatever the cause, the practice reveals deepening complexity of belief, that death could be shaped, guided, controlled through offerings of blood. Imagine the moment of such ritual. Drums beat, chants rise, the leader's body laid in center, attendants stand, trembling, knowing they will join. Perhaps they accept, perhaps they resist, perhaps drugs or trance dull fear. The crowd watches, grief mingling with awe, horror with devotion. When it ends, bodies lie together, adorned, arranged. The grave becomes not only shrine of love, but theatre of power. Even humor may have surfaced nervously. Someone mutters, "At least he won't have to carry water himself in afterlife." A grim chuckle passes through group, laughter masking fear. Humanity has always used jokes to endure even darkest rituals. Sacrifice extended beyond humans. Animals too were killed, laid beside dead, dogs, cattle, horses, birds. Their presence suggests belief that the dead required beasts for travel, food, companionship. The grave becomes miniature world, stocked with provisions. Violence becomes generosity, killing becomes gift, and sometimes blood was offered without body. Rituals may have involved cutting, spilling drops onto grave, staining soil red. Archaeologists find bones with cut marks suggesting flesh stripped deliberately, skulls arranged as trophies. These gestures blur line between reverence and brutality, between love and fear. The dead were honored, but also controlled, bound by offerings of flesh. Consider the living who witnessed. Children must have trembled, watching attendants slain. Animals bled, yet they also learned a lesson. Belief is serious, spirits are powerful, ritual demands sacrifice. They grew up understanding that devotion could cost dearly, that ancestors and gods alike required obedience. Religion became not only comfort but authority, shaping behavior through awe and dread. Over time, sacrifice grew formal, chants structured, roles assigned, rituals codified. Leaders harnessed belief, using it to consolidate power. To command sacrifice at one's grave was to prove dominion even in death. Communities complied, convinced it was necessary, or too afraid to resist. Faith became system, grief became law, death became currency. Yet tenderness still coexisted. In same cemeteries where sacrifice is evident, other graves remain gentle, adorned with flowers, beads, tools. Humanity did not abandon compassion. Instead, it wove both extremes together. Love for some, sacrifice for others, beauty and blood sharing soil. And belief justified it. If spirits demanded company, then sacrifice was duty. If gods required blood, then offering was devotion. To refuse was to risk anger, misfortune, plague, fear-bound practice. Faith sanctified it. Violence became sacred. Cruelty transformed into ritual. Archaeologists see echoes in myths. Stories of gods who require blood. Heroes who demand companions. Spirits appeased by sacrifice. These legends may root in ancient graves, in practices first carried out by torchlight in silence. The myths preserved memory of rituals, cloaking them in narrative, passing them across generations. Even now, faint echoes persist. We no longer bury attendants with kings, but we still honor dead with offerings, flowers, candles, prayers. We no longer sacrifice lives, but we still sacrifice time, wealth, effort. The instinct to give remains, softened, transformed, but traceable. Violence may have faded, but devotion endures. Humor remains too, even in darker pasts. Families joke at funerals that ancestor wouldn't want to go alone, or would complain about chores. These quips echo ancient fears, transformed into playful memories. Joking about sacrifice is way of easing shadows, softening dread that once drove real bloodshed. Picture yourself now at such grave. You watch as body is laid, attendants beside, animals too. The chants rise, drums thunder, blood stains soil. You feel horror, awe, confusion. Yet you also feel certainty that the dead is not alone, that spirit is fed, that ancestors are appeased. The ritual wounds, but it also heals. Paradox etched in soil. As night falls, the grave is closed, cairn raised, chants fade. You walk away, chest heavy, mind troubled, yet heart convinced. Death is not silence. It is negotiation, bargain, exchange. Love gives flowers. Fear gives blood, both offered to unseen. Humanity has begun to believe not only in afterlife, but in its demands, its dangers, its hunger, and in that belief we glimpse shadow of all future religions, mixture of compassion and fear, devotion and violence, beauty and blood. The graves grow more numerous, cairns rising, caves filling, and soon the living face a new reality. One grave alone is powerful, but many graves together transform landscape. Families begin returning to the same ground again and again, placing their dead side by side, generation upon generation. The earth becomes crowded with memory, fields seeded not with crops but with bones. These are the first cemeteries, shared spaces where community gathers its dead into one great presence. Picture a meadow on a low hill. At first, only one mound breaks surface, stones piled carefully above. Years pass, another burial joins nearby, then another. Soon the hill is dotted with mounds, each one a voice in chorus of memory. The living climb hill to bury kin, passing earlier cairns, pausing to touch stones, whisper names. Burial becomes tradition, hill becomes sacred, place itself becomes part of identity. Archaeologists trace these beginnings to sites where dozens of burials cluster together, not randomly but deliberately. In the Levant in Europe, in Africa, communities used caves, hollows, or open ground repeatedly, layering skeletons over centuries. The choice was not convenience alone, it was meaning. By joining dead together, groups proclaimed continuity, belonging, kinship that reached across time, and cemeteries shaped ritual. Instead of solitary mourning, families met each other at graves, shared tears, shared songs. One funeral became many, one family's grief folded into another's. Through repetition, funerals transformed into community events, weaving tribe closer. The cemetery was not only for dead, but for living, teaching them they were part of larger story. Imagine children following parents uphill, watching as another grave is opened, another body lowered. They glance at other mounds, hearing names of ancestors recited. Each burial becomes lesson. This is who we are. This is where we belong. The cemetery becomes classroom, genealogy inscribed in soil. Some burials within cemeteries are rich, adorned with beads, tools, antlers, others plain, only ochre or flowers. Status differences appear, visible even in death. Cemeteries thus reflect not only love, but hierarchy, shaping identity of group through graves. They remind living power persists beyond death, honor marked in soil. Yet, even the plainest graves are not forgotten. Each mound, each stone is visited, touched, whispered to. Children may tease, playing hide and seek among cairns, laughter ringing in field of dead. Adults smile, half scandalized, half comforted. Humor softens fear, weaving joy even into cemeteries. Cemeteries also mark land. To bury many together is to claim place. To anchor tribe, outsiders see mounds and understand this land belongs to those who buried here, to their ancestors who guard it. Cemeteries are both memory and defense, both grief and declaration. The living say through graves, we are of this ground, disturb it at your peril. And cemeteries invite return not only for funerals but for rituals. Families visit on certain days, bringing food, lighting fires, leaving gifts. Chants rise, dances circle, children laugh, elders whisper. The cemetery becomes seasonal gathering place, blending mourning with celebration, death with life. Archaeologists uncover signs of such return. Hearths near burials, ash layers above graves, offerings deposited long after burial. These suggest cemeteries were not abandoned after funerals, but revisited, cared for, transformed into sites of ongoing ritual. Picture a festival at cemetery. Families gather, fires blaze, meat roasts, voices sing. Between cairns, children play, lovers walk, elders tell stories. The dead lie beneath, but they are part of gathering, honored guests. The cemetery is not silent sorrow, but communal celebration of continuity. The arrangement of graves reveals intention. Some are lined in rows, others clustered by family, others encircled by stones. Such order shows planning, care, structure. Cemeteries were not haphazard, but deliberate. Shaped to reflect identity of group, they became maps of memory, geographies of belonging. Cemeteries also inspired myth. Seeing so many graves together, people may have believed spirits formed community below, mirroring living above. The dead became tribe of their own, shadow society guiding, watching, whispering. Stories grew. Ancestors speak in dreams, gather in councils, shape fate of living. Belief deepened as cemeteries grew, and fear too emerged. To walk among many graves at night must have stirred unease. Shadows flickering, wind moaning, stones looming, children whispered of spirits rising, adults muttered prayers. Cemeteries carried both comfort and dread, both belonging and terror. Humor eased this too. Imagine a boy leaping from behind cairn, startling sibling, laughter ringing even as heart races. Even fear was softened with play, cemeteries becoming not only sacred, but also familiar. They were part of life, part of daily world, not only shadow of death. Over centuries, cemeteries expanded into monumental forms. Mounds grew vast, rings of stones encircled multiple burials, long barrows stretched across hills. These were not only for memory but for display, proving power, wealth, devotion. Communities invested immense labor, showing that cemeteries had become central to identity, sacred above all. yet within grandeur remained tenderness. Each grave, however humble, was still touched, still visited, still remembered. The cemetery was tapestry of grief and love, woven together from countless threads of loss. Even now, we echo these practices. We build cemeteries where dead lie side by side, rows of stones stretching across fields. We visit on certain days, lay flowers, share stories, sometimes laugh, sometimes weep. Children play among graves, adults hush them, then smile, remembering that life must continue. Cemeteries remain both solemn and familiar, sacred and ordinary, just as they were millennia ago. Picture yourself walking through such ancient cemetery. Stones rise, mounds swell, cairns cluster. You touch one, whisper name you were taught, then another, then another. You feel weight of history pressing, but also warmth of belonging. These are not only graves, they are family tribe, story carved into earth. You breathe deeply, grief and comfort mingling, heart heavy, yet lifted. As you leave, the sun sets behind mounds, shadows stretch across field. The cemetery glows in dusk, alive with memory, humming with presence. You realize that to bury many together is to weave community tighter, to anchor identity in ground, to bind generations across centuries. The shared cemetery is not only for dead, it is for living, teaching them who they are, where they belong, and how to endure. The cemetery hill hums with memory, each cairn a voice, each mound a story. Yet as generations pass, grief and belief outgrow simple stones. Communities begin to build not only piles but structures, tombs, chambers, vast mounds raised by countless hands. The graves swell into monuments, rising above landscape like mountains made by people. From simple burials grow great earthworks and stoneworks, places that demand awe. In these, humanity declares that death is not only personal loss, but cosmic event, that ancestors deserve not only cairns but cathedrals. Picture the work itself. Dozens, even hundreds, gather to drag stones across fields, ropes straining, shoulders burning. Earth is hauled basket by basket, poured into mounds that swell higher each day. The task takes months, even years, demanding effort from entire community. Children carry pebbles, elders oversee, hunters pause their pursuits to labor. The monument is not for one alone, but for all. It is grief transformed into architecture, mourning reshaped into mountain. Archaeologists uncover such monuments at sites like Newgrange in Ireland, where massive mounds hide passage graves, aligned with solstice sun, or at Carnac in France, where rows of standing stones stretch across fields. These were not random, they required planning, skill, astronomical knowledge. They reveal that burial had become more than gesture, it had become central axis of culture. Why such scale? Perhaps to honor ancestors, ensuring memory endures as long as stone stands, perhaps to proclaim power, proving community strength through sheer labor, perhaps to sanctify land, transforming natural world into sacred landscape. Whatever the cause, monuments show that death was no longer private. It was public, cosmic, universal. Inside these monuments, burials continue. Passages lead to chambers where bones lie, often mixed, sometimes painted, sometimes adorned. The living enter during rituals, torches flaring, chants echo. Light pierces chamber only on certain days. Solstice sunrise striking back wall, or moonlight aligning through stones. The monument becomes calendar as well as tomb, teaching that death is part of cosmic order. Imagine standing inside Newgrange on winter solstice, the chamber dark, cold, silent. Then, slowly, a beam of sunlight creeps down passage, flooding chamber with gold. Bones glow, carvings shimmer, ancestors bask in light. The living gasp, tears rising. In that moment, grief transforms into revelation. Death is part of Sun's journey, rebirth certain, cycle endless. Even humor sneaks into such grandeur. Picture children sliding down sides of earthen mound, shrieking with laughter while elders glare, muttering, "Show respect," yet secretly they smile, remembering that ancestors too once played. Even monuments cannot silence joy. Monuments also change how living see themselves. To build them requires cooperation beyond family, beyond kin. Whole communities labor together, strengthening bonds, forging identity. The monument is both shrine and proof of unity, standing as testament not only to dead, but to living who raised it. Over time, monuments grow ever more elaborate. Passage graves carved with spirals, zigzags, circles, stones aligned with stars, sun, moon, tombs built like houses for dead, complete with doorways, chambers, roofs. The dead dwell not in pits or caves, but in architecture rivaling that of living. Death gains palaces, cathedrals, cities. Archaeologists marvel at labor invested. Stones weighing tons hauled miles, placed with precision. Earth mounds stretching hundreds of feet. Such devotion cannot be explained by grief alone. It reveals faith, conviction that ancestors are powerful, that to honor them is to ensure fertility, prosperity, survival. The monuments are prayers in stone, offerings of labor to gods and spirits, and monuments proclaim presence to outsiders. Travelers see them looming and know, this land is occupied, this people is powerful, these ancestors guard fiercely. Monuments are both shrines and defenses, both prayer and proclamation. They extend identity outward, shaping not only memory but politics. Children growing up near such monuments feel awe. They climb mounds, trace carvings, hear stories of ancestors within. They learn that community is ancient, rooted, sacred. The monument becomes anchor of culture, teaching who they are and why they endure. Rituals within monuments reinforce this. On certain days, whole communities gather, enter chambers, light fires, sing hymns. Bones are touched, offerings left, chants echo. The monument becomes stage for performance, blending art, astronomy, theology, grief. The dead are not silent, they are participants in drama of cosmos. Humor finds its way even here. Imagine elder tripping over stone during solemn procession, laughter rippling through crowd before hush returns. Humanity has always needed levity to balance weight, even inside tombs of awe. Over centuries, monuments shift from communal tombs to elite markers. Chiefs, kings, rulers claim them, filling chambers with their own bones, adorned with riches. Death becomes hierarchy, monument becomes symbol of power. Yet even then, ordinary people gather at edges, leave offerings, whisper prayers. Monuments remain communal, even when claimed by elites, and monuments inspire myth. Stories arise of giants who built them, gods who dwell within, ancestors who sleep beneath. The spiral carvings become symbols of eternity, the alignments proof of cosmic order. The monuments are not only architecture but scripture in stone, myths carved into earth. Even now we echo them. Our cemeteries grow monumental, mausoleums, obelisks, statues. We raise towers, arches, memorials for dead. We carve names in marble, align monuments with sunrise. The instinct persists. Grief must be carved in stone, memory must rise above landscape. Picture yourself standing before such a mound at dusk. The sun sets, shadows stretch, stones glow faintly. You enter passage, torch in hand, footsteps echoing. Chamber opens, bones lie silent, carvings shimmer. You kneel, place offering, whisper prayer. You feel awe, fear, belonging. The monument is not only tomb, but cosmos, binding death and life, sun and soil, human and God. As you step outside, stars burn above, monument looming behind. You realize death has outgrown pit and cairn, blossomed into architecture of eternity. Humanity no longer buries only bodies, it buries memory, faith, identity, carved into stone, raised into sky. Monuments teach that death is not only ending, but cornerstone of culture. And as you drift into sleep tonight, imagine lying beneath such a mound, stone roof above, carvings glowing in torchlight. Around you, ancestors breathe in silence, community sings beyond walls, sun waits to rise. You feel safe, remembered, part of cosmos. From graves to monuments, humanity has woven death into architecture of hope. The monuments rise, vast against the horizon, chambers echoing with chants and the weight of generations. Yet if you stand among them long enough, you realize that their power is not only in stone or in labor. Their true strength lies in memory, in the way each grave, each cairn, each mound tells who a people are. Burial is never only about the dead, it is about the living, shaping identity through remembrance. The soil becomes archive, the grave becomes story, the monument becomes mirror of community. Picture a family gathered at a mound where their ancestors lie. An elder gestures towards stones, speaking names, telling stories. Here is your grandmother who taught us songs. Here is your uncle who hunted the stag. Here is the child who made us laugh. Each tale binds listeners tighter, weaving past into present. Burial sites become oral histories, markers that anchor memory. To forget them would be to forget oneself. Archaeologists see this in cemeteries revisited for centuries, in monuments built larger with each generation. Such persistence shows that burial was not only ritual but tradition, each act repeating memory, ensuring identity endured. The bones beneath are not anonymous, they are voices remembered, faces retold. Each grave is anchor point in web of belonging, and graves also divide identity. Rich burials marked status, adorned with beads, tools, ornaments. Plain graves marked others. The cemetery speaks of hierarchy, teaching who mattered most. Memory is political, identity shaped by graves as much as by lives. To be buried richly is to be remembered richly. To be buried humbly is to risk fading into silence. Imagine the tension. A family watching as leader's body is covered with beads, ivory, spears, while their own kin receives only ochre and stone. They murmur softly, envy mixing with sorrow. Yet even envy confirms identity. It reminds them who leads, who follows, who holds power. The cemetery is lesson in both unity and division. But not all memory is hierarchy. Children's burials, adorned with beads, show that love too shaped remembrance. Communities chose to honor even the smallest, to keep memory of brief lives alive. In this tenderness, identity stretches beyond power to include compassion, reminding us that being human is to value more than strength. Humor enters memory too. Families tell funny stories at graves, recalling quirks of ancestors. He always burned meat even when fire was hot. Or she never stopped singing, even when we begged her. Laughter rings among stones, proof that memory is not only solemn but joyful. Identity is carried in jokes as much as in laments. Archaeologists at sites like Sungir marvel at the sheer effort poured into burials, beads carved over years, ornaments painstakingly made. This labor is not only devotion to dead, but reinforcement of living identity. To make such offerings is to proclaim, we are people who honor our dead lavishly. We are people who invest love in memory. Every bead is declaration of who they are. Children grow up surrounded by such practices. They learn names of ancestors, touch stones of graves, repeat chants, They understand early identity is inherited, carried, shaped by those before. They feel themselves not individuals adrift, but threads in long fabric. Burial grounds teach continuity, binding child to ancestors through memory, and graves shape territory. To bury ancestors in one place is to claim it as home. The land itself becomes identity, fused with bones beneath. To leave would mean abandoning dead, losing self. Thus burial binds people to soil, anchoring memory in geography. Imagine community debating whether to migrate. Elders shake heads, pointing to cemetery. We cannot leave them. They guard us. The younger grumble, but they stay, tethered by bones. Identity is not only in breath, but in soil, not only in living, but in dead. Belief deepens this identity. Ancestors are not silent, but active, guiding hunts, blessing harvests, punishing neglect. To forget them is to risk misfortune. To remember them is to thrive. Burial becomes covenant. Memory becomes survival. To be human is to belong not only to tribe, but to chain of ancestors, and monuments amplify identity outward. They proclaim to strangers, this is who we are. These are our ancestors. This is our power. Travelers see stones and know community is strong, united, ancient. Memory carved in stone becomes political statement, identity declared publicly. Humor still threads through. Imagine travelers stumbling at monument, muttering, even dead trippers up. Locals laugh, remembering ancestors as mischievous as living. Memory is not only reverence but play, shaping identity with warmth as much as awe. Over centuries, memory grows layered. Each new burial adds voice. Each new story enriches identity. Cemeteries become libraries, monuments become chronicles, graves become chapters in book of community. To stand among them is to read history written in soil. Even now, we echo this. We carve names in headstones. We tell stories at funerals. We laugh and weep at wakes. We build memorials not only to mourn, but to proclaim identity, national cemeteries, monuments, plaques. We declare who we are through how we bury our dead. Picture yourself standing at ancient cemetery, hand on stone, listening to elder tell stories. The names, deeds, jokes flow, weaving you into lineage. You feel pride, belonging, responsibility. The dead are not gone. They are you, shaping who you are, who you will become. As night falls, torches flicker among graves, laughter mingles with laments, chants rise into sky. You realize memory is not passive, but active, shaping daily life, teaching morality, anchoring identity. To forget dead would be to forget yourself. To remember them is to live fully human. And as you drift into sleep tonight, imagine ancestors whispering stories, guiding dreams, shaping heart. Their memory is your identity, their graves your anchor. Humanity has always known this, that to bury is to remember is to belong. The monument stands silent in dusk, memory clings to cairns, ancestors linger in caves and hearths. Yet as you step back, looking across the long path of human burial, you realize the story is larger than any single mound or grave, from the first shallow pits, dusted with ochre, to the vast passage tombs aligned with stars. The act of laying our dead in earth has shaped us. The legacy of graves is not only in bones beneath soil, but in how we learn to love, to believe, to imagine, to remember. Picture that first body covered by leaves, awkward and tentative. Then picture the child swaddled in ochre, the skull kept by hearth, the cairn rising against sky. Each act is thread in tapestry that binds humanity together. Burial is not accident of survival, but deliberate invention, the invention of meaning. By burying, we declared that life is more than breath, that memory is more than moment, that love is more than flesh. The stones rest quietly now, the cairns dim under starlight, and the voices of mourning have drifted into silence. You have walked through shallow graves dusted with ochre, through caves echoing with bones, through monuments aligned with sun and sky. You have seen flowers fade into soil, tools offered as gifts, children laid tenderly in earth, ancestors kept near hearth, and you have heard the songs, the laments, the laughter that softened grief across ages. But tonight, all of that weight grows light. You do not need to carry the sorrow of tens of thousands of years. You need only let it settle gently like ash after fire, like dew across grass. What remains is comfort, that humanity has always grieved together, has always remembered, has always loved beyond breath. Every grave, every mound, every bead is proof that we have never been alone. So let your own breath soften. Inhale slowly, feel lungs fill, then exhale, long and steady. Your shoulders ease, your jaw unclenches, your eyes grow heavy. Imagine lying on gentle hill, cairns rising faint around you, stars glittering above. The ancestors are not frightening, they are guardians, silent and kind, watching over your rest. You are safe here, part of chain that stretches back into deep time, forward into endless future. Death is not erasure, but continuity. Love does not vanish, but endures. Even in silence you are held. Let your thoughts slow now. Let them drift like smoke into night sky. Sleep approaches softly, wrapping you like Earth's own cradle. Close your eyes, rest in memory, in love, in belonging. Rest in the quiet legacy of graves, and sleep well until morning comes. Good night, sweet dreams. Archaeologists trace this legacy in every continent, finding graves tens of thousands of years old. Each one whispers the same truth. Humanity could not abandon its dead. We carried them into soil, into caves, into monuments, ensuring they remained part of us. And through that instinct, we shaped culture itself. Religion, art, story, morality, all sprout from graves like shoots from seed. Consider belief in afterlife. It may have begun at graveside, when mourner dreamed of dead and declared they walked still. Consider art, ochre-dusted, beads strung, carvings laid in soil. Consider story, ancestors remembered in chants, myths born from mourning. Consider community, cemeteries binding groups, monuments forging unity, all traced to burial, to the decision that death must not be silent. And humour too persists across ages. Even as people wailed, they laughed, recalling quirks of dead, teasing spirits, chuckling through tears. This mixture of sorrow and laughter is part of legacy. It teaches that to be human is to mourn fully and live fully, refusing to let grief drown joy. Even now at funerals, families laugh as much as they cry. The instinct is ancient. The legacy of graves also includes fear, sacrifices laid beside rulers, blood spilled at tombs, animals slain for journeys. These too were part of story. Burial taught us not only love but awe, not only comfort but terror. The dead became powerful, demanding, shaping morality through threat as well as hope. Our religions still echo this duality, promise of paradise, warning of punishment, and graves shaped landscapes. Burial mounds rose into hills, cemeteries claimed valleys, monuments dotted coasts. To walk across ancient world was to walk among dead, their presence carved into geography. Even now we live beside cemeteries, we travel past gravestones, we carve highways through burial grounds. The dead remain in our maps, shaping our movement. Identity too is forged by graves. Families tell stories at tombs, nations build memorials, cultures claim land through ancestors beneath. We are who we are because of who we remember. Without graves, memory would drift, but with them, it anchors. This is why communities fight fiercely to protect cemeteries, why they mourn when graves are disturbed. To desecrate burial is to attack identity itself. Picture yourself now, walking through modern cemetery, stones carved with names, flowers laid fresh, toys placed on children's graves, flags planted at soldiers' tombs. Each gesture echoes Paleolithic ancestors sprinkling ochre, placing beads, laying flowers. The instinct has not changed. We still honor, we still remember, we still weave grief into ritual. The legacy also lies in art. From cave paintings to elegies, from requiems to memorial statues, art grows from burial. To honor dead, humans created beauty, shaping grief into song, into pigment, into stone. Without graves, perhaps art itself would never have flourished. Death forced us to imagine beyond flesh, to create symbols that endure. And the legacy is in our faiths. Every great religion carries burial at its heart. Tombs of saints, relics of martyrs, shrines of ancestors, from pyramids to catacombs, from mausoleums to memorial parks. The act of laying dead in earth defines spiritual life. Burial gave rise to belief, and belief gave rise to civilizations. Even humor persists in legacy. Gravestones carved with witty epitaphs, families joking at wakes, children skipping between stones. Humanity insists on weaving laughter into mourning, ensuring that legacy of graves is not only solemn, but human in full. As you reflect tonight, the graves speak softly. We shaped you. Without us, you would not have art, religion, memory, identity. You would not know who you are. Burial gave you past, burial gave you story, burial gave you soul. To bury is to be human. Picture final image, a hill beneath stars, dotted with mounds, cairns glowing faintly in moonlight. Families gather, whisper prayers, sing songs, tell stories, laugh gently. Beneath soil lie bones, ochre, beads, flowers. Above, stars blaze, wind hums. Between them stands humanity, bridging earth and sky through graves. The dead are silent, yet they speak endlessly, shaping living. And so, as you rest, feel the legacy of graves around you. Know that you are never alone, that ancestors linger in memory, in story, in faith. Their graves are not only in earth, but in your heart. Through them you belong. Through them you endure. Through them you remain human. Now let your breath slow, shoulders soften, eyes grow heavy. The graves hum quietly, not with fear but with comfort. You are surrounded by memory, anchored in belonging, carried by love, older than history. The dead do not leave you, they cradle you. Drift now, gently, into sleep, wrapped in the legacy of graves, safe in the endless chain of humanity.